Lesson 10. Magic is not something you do, magic is something you are. I have said this over and over to students, and I have tried to make it clear in these lessons. True magicians realize that since they can work magic and affect their lives, they are really free to do anything they wish. True magicians also realize that they are responsible for their actions, thus freedom and responsibility are signs of a magical lifestyle. This attitude is also the basis for a magician's view of sex. As a magician, I believe that everyone is entitled to have sex any way he or she desires, as long as it does not involve the coercion of anyone else. If you are straight, gay, celibate, or promiscuous, if you are into B and D, S&M, or just about anything else, that's fine with me. As long as you do not coerce someone into something they do not wish to do, freedom, responsibility, and honesty should be a magician's guide. For that matter, these ideas should guide any person's actions. Unfortunately, various organizations of dubious worth coerce people into various sexual situations. One organization I am familiar with has the leader determine sexual partners. This includes having to be in an adjacent room while your mate has intercourse with another person. This allows you to hear every sound. Another organization I know of preaches strictly celibate. Married members are only allowed to have sex once a month, and that only for the purpose of procreation. However, I know that many members of this organization do not follow this rule. In fact, one of the vice presidents of this organization, a man who teaches celibacy, had a torrid affair with a woman I know. The organization is aware of his extracurricular activities and moves him from so-called temple to temple, but does not expel him. Another organization's leader told several members to get divorces, which they did. This leader also encourages romantic affairs, but is against marriage. This leader's actions has ruined several families. Why do these organizations and their leaders try to control people's sex lives? The most personal and private thing which we possess is our sexuality. It is impossible to get physically closer to another person than during sexual relations in some matters. Therefore, sex is totally involved in our psyches. Control a person's sex life and you control the person's psyche. You control the person. Control of a person's sex life is a method of brainwashing. Perhaps you remember Patty Hearst. She was kidnapped by a group with whose philosophies she did not agree with. She later became a member of the group. One of the means used to accomplish this was the control of her sex life. She was forced to have sexual intercourse with several people, including having group sex. This was one of the ways her will was broken down until she lost her own ideals and adopted those of her captors. This is not an attempt to philosophically side with Miss Hearst or her captors. It is only to show how one method of brainwashing is done. In the case of the first group I mentioned earlier, controlling the sex life of the members allows the control of the members' minds. Thus, although the organization is supposed to teach each member how to be unique, independent individuals, everyone tends to freely accept the commands of this leader. Also, the members give large amounts of money to the organization, much of which goes to the leader itself. Concerning the second group, its current leader apparently has incredible thirst for power in terms of control over people and control of money. Thus, the leaders ignore their own spirituality and attempt to enforce a lifestyle which they do not follow. Still, the members feel guilty if they cannot fulfill the required celibacy and work harder to raise the funds for their organization. It quickly becomes easy to believe the truths of the leaders who proceed to teach the members how to lie and steal. In fact, this group was recently convicted in court of wrongful death, libel, and kidnapping. A spiritual organization indeed. The third organization is totally enthralled to its leader. The leader dresses up in bizarre clothes with built-in light bulbs and makes videotapes of the group's theories, tapes which are so bad that they are unintentionally hilarious. Yet, like controlled robots, none of the leader's followers seem to care or realize how foolish they look. The more people laugh at them when they dress up in clothes that are half Renaissance, half science fiction, the more they become dedicated to the leader who controls their lives. The reason I am giving you these prefatory notes is to point out that there are organizations which attempt to control our sex lives as means of controlling our will. On a lower level, there are groups which use a guise of spirituality or learning in order to obtain people for sexual exploitation. These types of groups exist in all fields of endeavors, including the study of magic. Some magical groups are nothing more than a cover for one of two things: gaining sexual partners and gaining power over others. It is indeed a shame that some people feel so weak and helpless that in order to overcome these feelings, they must seek to have power over and control other people. It is also a shame that some people need spiritual facades in order to gain sexual partners. If you are working with a group of people and it seems obvious to you that sex is going to become a part of that group's activities, stop. Ask yourself if you really want to do this with these people. If these are not people you wish to become sexually involved with, get out before that possibility takes control of your life and will. And please do not think that you are immune to brainwashing or too smart for it. Many cults get a large percentage of their recruits from college campuses, and I have seen very bright and intelligent people go and investigate these cults only to be trapped in cultic doublethink and end up as pawns of a ruthless leader. It is because the control of a person's sex life can be used to get control over the person's life in general that I am taking so much time discussing brainwashing and cults. For the true sign of a magician is freedom of thought and freedom of will. You will never be a magician if you are under some cults and mind control. Further, brainwashing may not be what you think. You do not have to be tortured, berated day by day, although that is one method. Most groups today use a gradual process which induces you to ignore logic and accept the group's doublethink. In the bibliography which comes with this lesson, I am listing a few books which describe the signs of cults and their brainwashing techniques. I urge you to study them before joining any groups which use sexuality as parts of its teachings. Part 1. There are several different aspects to sexual magic, and it is difficult to divide them into categories as they overlap a great deal. Even so, it is necessary to make loose categories in order to discuss the subject. To understand that these divisions are just for communication's sake and other writers may not follow them, I divide the types of magic which use the sexual energies as a fundamental source into three groups. 1. Thought control. This is a method of controlling sexual energy via the mind during sexual excitation and orgasm. This may not sound difficult, but it actually requires you to concentrate on something while you are in a state of consciousness where directed thinking is very difficult. This will be explained later, including how to overcome this problem. 2. Inner alchemy. This is a type of white magic which could be called white sex magic. It is an important part of Taoist alchemy, also called Taoist yoga and Tantric yoga. Some purists may be upset that I am introducing Oriental elements into this course. However, as I have said, I am very eclectic. Since the writings of Helena Blavatsky, Oriental mysticism has been incorporated into Western mystical philosophy and practice. Even the Golden Dawn took much from the East. This includes both the ideas of karma and the Taktvic tides, a system which can help in understanding and working with magical elements. Also, it is unfortunately true that with the denunciation of sex for anything but procreation as taught by the Christian Church for over 1500 years, much of Western sex magic has been deeply hidden. This was not the situation in the East, and thus there is much more material even if it is in many instances heavily disguised. 3. Outer alchemy. This is more along the lines of gray magic. It uses sexual fluids which have been magically charged to the end of achieving a chosen goal. Note that this uses tangible elements as opposed to the sexual forces which are the basis of inner alchemy. Outer alchemy is frequently associated with Western Hermetic alchemy, as much Western alchemical literature, once you know the code, is simply disguised introductions in sex magic. None of these three systems is easy to learn or master. Further, only 100 years ago the techniques were deep secrets and spoken of in hushed whispers. But we are in an era now, and with the knowledge which may now be shared along with sincere and dedicated practice, anyone may become proficient at any of the techniques of sex magic. Many magicians believe that sex magic entirely traces its heritage back to the tantrics of India and Tibet. While much of sex magic does come from those sources, there are aspects of sex magic which are from traditional Western sources. Even if they do have similarities with Eastern practices, an example of this is that sex and consummation, the sex magic, is a basis part of the Kabbalah. Even stodgy A.E. White, with blushing face no doubt, admits in the Holy Kabbalah that the supreme wisdom of the Kabbalah is a mystery of sex. He also reports that the Zohar makes clear that the best time for a man and a woman to have intercourse is on the holiest of days of the week, the Sabbath. It is also stated there that if a man travels away from his wife for a time in order to study the Kabbalah, on his return home, his first duty and obligation is to make love with his wife. Of course, there is a difference between sex and sex magic, but by understanding that the sides of the tree of life are masculine and feminine, and even the tetragrammaton is composed of masculine and feminine letters, one can see the inherent sexuality of the Kabbalah. But let's get practical. There is a Hebrew book called the Igrit Yakolesh, which translates as the Holy Letter. This book dates from around the end of the 13th century, and on the surface is a type of medieval Jewish marriage manual. Today's marriage manuals are nothing more than sex books given various positions for sexual intercourse and other sexual activity. In ancient China, these were known as pillow books, but marriage manuals were not always such. Many hardly even mention sex, limiting discussions to philosophy and simple psychology. This was primarily due to the cultures wherein these books were written and to the censorship rules of the society. Judaism and Kabbalists did not cringe from sexuality as did many cultures. One of the holy books of the Jews, usually called the Song of Solomon, on the surface is nothing more than an erotic love poem. Yet Rabbi Akiba, a famous mystic, one of his disciples, Simon ben Yochai, is said to have written the Zohar, said of this work, "The whole universe is not worth the day of that book, the Song of Solomon, has been given to Israel." Further, he said, "All scriptures are holy, but the Song of Songs," actual name of the Song of Solomon, "is the most holy." Certainly, there is more to the sex of the Song of Songs than mere eroticism. The Holy Letter discusses sexuality in all of its aspects. This includes mystical and magical aspects of sex. Thus we read, "When a man unites with his wife in holiness, the sikata is between them in the mystery of man and woman, since the shikna, pronounced she-che-a, ch as the German ach, is equivalent to the idea of God's Holy Spirit or the Tantric Shakti." Note the similarity in the sounds of the words. We see that the author of this book is talking about something special. Indeed, the author is discussing what is commonly called Kundalini Yoga, more accurately, Lala Yoga. This will be discussed when I talk about inner alchemy. The Holy Letter also mentions the aspect of sex magic, which I term thought control. This type of sex magic may be the most palatable for people from Western cultures. The Holy Letter states, "According to the thoughts you have in intercourse, so will the form come upon the seed." Superficially, this means that if you are thinking spiritually thoughts when having intercourse, you will have spiritual child. If happy thoughts, a happy child, etc. As we all know, however, every act of sexual intercourse does not result in the birth of a child, or does it? Certainly, I could not deny that the number of times sexual intercourse leads to the birth of an infant human is small compared to the number of times sexual intercourse is performed, but think back to my comments in creative visualization. Remember that you can constantly go through the visualization process whether you realize the fact or not. Likewise, every time you have sexual intercourse, you give birth to a magical child, of some sort, even if no human child is the result. Or, to put it in another way, the key idea behind the thought control form of sex magic is the thought held at the instant of orgasm comes to pass. Unfortunately, this is not as easy as it might sound. To understand why this is so, we must look at the theories of Dr. Wilhelm Reich. Many professionals in the field of psychology dismiss Reich. They claim that one of his basic theories that people who were psychologically disturbed could not have an orgasm is false. It is clear that many people with psychological problems are capable of having an orgasm, such as in the instance of violent rape, and such this is a basis of many of Reich's theories. They must all be wrong. Well, it is obvious to me that none of these experts on Reich ever bothered to read any of his works. Obviously, for Reich never said that people with psychological problems could not have such orgasms. Reich knew that such a person could have, indeed, he must have been aware of the important psychological text, Psychopathia Sexualis by Krafft Ebing. That book has been the physician's resource on psychological sexuality for many years. What Reich said was that a person who was psychologically disturbed was not orgasmically potent. Reich believed that during sexual excitation, an energy which he called organ built up in the body for full mental health. This energy needed to be discharged during orgasm. You could compare this to blowing up a balloon. As the sexual excitation increases, more air is blown into said balloon. If you lose control over your consciousness, the air will be safely discharged through the valve onto the balloon. If, on the other hand, you do not lose control, the balloon increases in size and pressure until it pops. Similarly, the natural and healthy in and out flow of organ energy does not occur. According to Reich, in a person with a psychological disturbance, this type of person would have a greater or lesser emotional, psychological, and/or physical control of him or herself at the moment of orgasm. The controlled behavior, according to Reich, is not healthy. To be a healthy person needs to be orgasmically potent. This means that during the convolutions of the orgasmic experience, a person should not be thinking, am I doing this right? Is my partner enjoying this? Rather, a person should be so caught up in the very animalistic enjoyment of sex that nothing can be thought of. There should be only pure, free thought experience. Does this idea of free thought experience sound similar to you? Or familiar at all? It should, because going into such a state is exactly what true meditation is. Reich discovered that the moment of orgasm can be identical to true meditation. Reich believed that being orgasmically potent, being able to achieve the thought-free, sense-oriented state described above, was the only way to release organ energy. If this was not done, the human balloon would pop from overinflation of organ energy. This popping would be in the form of psychological problems. While it is true that this is one way to release organ energy, I must disagree with it being the only way. Tantrics have methods of controlling this energy at will. This will be covered in the section on inner alchemy. Further, it is true that a person experiencing an orgasm which is orgasmically potent is without thought. In fact, such a person is only without conscious thought. The act of sexual intercourse or other sexual activity wherein a person is brought to orgasm is so primal that it takes us to a period before our rational consciousness ruled over the self. Thus, it is our unconsciousness which holds sway over us at the moment we experience an orgasmically potent orgasm. As I've said before, the unconscious is our link to the astral plane, also called the Etcharatic world. When you create something in the astral plane as a result of your thinking procedures, it must come into existence on the physical plane. Whatever thought is on our mind at the point of orgasm goes directly to the subconscious and into the astral plane. It must manifest. That is why the thought held in the mind at the instant of orgasm must come into existence. But that is also the difficulty. To open up the subconscious, we must be orgasmically potent. This means we must temporarily lose ourself and our ego. Unfortunately, that aspect of our being is locked up with the logical reasoning self. If we lose that, how can we keep an idea on our mind when having an orgasm? Luckily, there is a way. The subconscious does not think in words, it thinks in symbols or images. You see the word tree, but the subconscious and your memory keeps an image of a tree you have seen or imagined at one time or another. Therefore, all you have to do is make up a symbol to represent that which you want. Symbols, shapes, and objects can stay with you through an orgasmically potent orgasm, while words will not. Simply keep the symbol in mind when you have an orgasm, and though this is not difficult, it does require practice. A sex magic ritual for a couple. Let both participants be aware that a magical act, a spiritual act, is about to be performed, not just a common act of sexual intercourse. Step 1. Let both participants know the purpose of this act. A divination should be done with both persons present to ensure the karmic correctness of the magical act. Step 2. Let a suitable sigil representing the purpose of the magical act be designed. Although a sigil taken from a grimoire will do, designing an original symbol is a good idea. The system of AO spare is quite good for this. Step 3. Let large versions of the above sigil be made and placed around the room. This must include the ceiling so that no matter which way you look, you will see the magical sigil. Step 4. A place of comfort should be established in the center of your area. Most commonly, this is a small mattress or a pad of some kind. If there is a room, place your altar at the head of the place of comfort. If there is not enough room, let the place of comfort be your altar. Step 5. Both participants should take time to shower and or bathe. Do this separately. Use appropriate scents, perfumes, and oils on your body after you dry yourself. Oils are especially good for this as different oils can be used in different parts of the body. As you come to your temple, remember that this is a holy place. Perform the opening by watchtower. Step 6. Now move to the place of comfort and begin to caress and adore one another. Slowly remove each other's robes. If you wish, apply lubricating body oils to each other as you continue to caress each other freely. Explore each other totally with eye, ear, mouth, voice, hand, foot, tongue, etc. At this part of the ritual, think not of the right. Rather, think of yourself and your partner. Let your sexual imagination run free. Step 7. When both people are ready, begin actual sexual intercourse, penis and vagina. As you continue caressing for a few moments, there should be no thrusting motions on the part of either participants. Step 8. Begin very slow thrusting motions as you both become more involved in this part of the rite. Observe the sigils around you. Do not concern yourself about their meaning. Your subconscious already knows the meaning. Just look at the symbols. Step 9. Allow your passion to dictate the speed of your movements until the intercourse is quite rigorous. If you wish, change the position of the ritual lovemaking. That is why it is necessary to post copies of your sigil all over the room. No matter where you look, no matter what position you are in, you must be able to see a copy of the sigil. Place as much concentration as possible on the symbols. Continue to orgasm. If the couple has been together for a while and both know each other's sexual responses, it would be best if both could orgasm at about the same time, although the so-called mutual orgasm is not necessary. Step 10. Stay coupled, i.e. allowing the detumescent penis to remain in the vagina for as long as possible, to a maximum of 15 minutes. During this time, the ritualists may caress each other, but refrain from much speaking. Step 11. Re-robe and do the closing by watchtower. The rite is complete. Note on this ritual: 1. The length of time of actual penis and vagina intercourse is not critical, but there must be enough time allowed to build up the energy in which is released with the symbolic thought at the moment of the active participant's orgasm. A minimum of 10 minutes is appropriate, but over half an hour is unnecessary. Certainly, women will not have a problem with this, except possibly soreness due to prolonged intercourse with insufficient vaginal lubrication. This can happen to women who are not used to extended periods of intercourse and can easily be remedied by the high use of quality sexual lubricant. Men, on the other hand, quite frequently have trouble staying erect and not having an orgasm too quickly. Masters and Johnson say that the average period for men between intersection of the penis into the vagina and orgasm is about 2.5 minutes. Since this is an average, the implication is that some men will have an orgasm within the seconds of intercourse. Later in this lesson, we will be doing instructions on how men may delay this orgasm. 2. This ritual may be done with partners of the same sex. It may also be done heterosexually, with the penis inserted in the anus or mouth of his partner. Note: after anal intercourse, the penis must be washed thoroughly before vaginal intercourse. Also see page 466. 3. The sexual position held by the couple at the moment of orgasm is important. Here are some tips. Missionary position, man on top, is good for situations where magic is done to positively affect the man's environment, i.e. allow him to get a raise, get a better job, etc. Women superior, woman on top, is for situations where magic is done to positively affect the woman's environment. Male behind, laying like spoons with the man behind his partner, also kneeling with the male behind his partner, is for sending energy such as healing to a friend of the man. For a friend of the woman, it is once again but with the woman on top, but with her back to her partner's face. 4. This ritual may also be done as an act of oral sex as mentioned. In this instance, there is not a place of comfort but a chair called a throne. The person who will have the orgasm sits in the throne, while the partner kneels or sits at the foot of the throne and performs cunnilingus or fellatio. The king or queen on the throne needs to hold the symbol in his or her hands and look at it while the partner performs the sexual stimulation. The person filleting a king should swallow all of his semen. The person performing cunnilingus on the woman should lick and swallow all of her sexual fluids. 5. This rite may also be done solitarily. The male may masturbate himself. If this is done, he should catch semen in a small vase which has a copy of the symbol in the vase at the base. The vase should then be sealed. Alternatively, he may catch the semen on a dish or plate and consume it. A partner may stimulate the man to orgasm by hand and consume the semen. Similarly, a woman may stimulate herself by hand or with the aid of a partner or even artificial devices such as a penis-shaped vibrators. After orgasm, she should douse with a small amount of pure water, all of which should be shaved, mixed with wine, and consumed. 6. Sexual experimentation and variation can be very enjoyable, but rituals is not the time to try new things. If you feel a sexual position which you have not performed previously with the partner of this ritual is appropriate, it should be practiced beforehand so that both of you know the most comfortable way for you to hold the position for several minutes. 7. Although both the Kabbalah and the Tantras disagree with him on this point, those who like Crowley may agree with him on that you should choose anyone to do the rite with, and they need not know the purpose of this rite. Personally, I feel that this type of sexual abuse and experience has shown that it is not as successful as when both partners are aware of what is happening. I mentioned it here so that if you like to follow Crowley, you will know the difference in his system. Divinatory techniques. This ritual is done the same way as the ritual above, however, the purpose is strictly for divination. It can also be used as a part of the evocation rites of the previous lesson. Read in the previous lesson the characteristics of a person who will make a good seer. It is this person upon whom the technique will be performed. There are 3 aspects involved in a divinatory technique. The diviner must 1. Turn off the outside, turn on the inside. 2. Alter the state of consciousness. And 3. Increase the blood flow to the brain. In this ritual, turning off the outside involves the use of what is called the yoni mudra. This is a position wherein the hands actually close down on the other senses. It is done this way. Put your hands in front of your face so that the fingertips touch and the palms are toward your face. Seal the mouth by locking the lips between the little fingers and ring fingers of both hands. This holds the mouth shut. Seal the nose by pressing against the nostrils with the middle fingers of both hands. Seal the eyes by holding the eyelids closed with the point fingers of each hand. Finally, seal the ears by closing the little flap of flesh in front of the ears over the entrance to the ear canals with each thumb. This position closes most of the external senses and allows the inner senses to come through. In a previous lesson, I gave instructions on how to alter the state of consciousness. Methods include the use of alcohol to produce mild intoxication, lack of sleep, etc. In this rite, the method used to increase the flow of blood to the head is to have the head below the rest of the body during intercourse. If you have a mattress for the place of comfort, the seer may dangle his or her head over the side of the mattress. If the seer is in very good health, pillows may be placed so that the hips and legs are elevated. In fact, if oral sex is used, the position on the throne can actually be reversed so that the person's legs are over the back of the chair and the person's head is at the foot of the chair. The partner stands behind the throne and performs the oral sex on the genitals, which are near the top of the chair's back. Important. This should not be done if the seer has high blood pressure. When the seer has achieved orgasm, he or she should be questioned in a manner similar to the techniques in the previous lesson. If information about the particular subject is desired, the seer may look at a symbol which the partners created. Before moving on, a final point about the yoni mudra. Students have told me that they have trouble breathing in this ritual pose. Well, not only is it difficult to breathe in this position, it is impossible. Separate the middle fingers and inhale through the nose. Hold the uni mudra and your breath for as long as it is comfortable. Then separate the ring fingers from the little fingers and exhale through the mouth. When I explain this to the students, some of them complain that it takes some of the spontaneity out of the lovemaking. Please remember, however, that this is not regular lovemaking. It is a highly ritualized and formalized. It is for a purpose, not only for pleasure. Another divination technique which uses sexuality is definitely not for all practitioners. Most will not wish to do it, and that is okay. It is called erotocomatose lucidity and does not involve a coupled pair. Rather, this ritual involves one ritualist seer and several aides who are usually of the opposite sex. After the opening as above, the aides, and the more sexually experienced they are, the better, attempt to exhaust the ritualist sexually by every known means and arouse the ritualist sexually by every known means. Every device and technique known may be used by the aides. If some of them tire, they should be replaced by others. Finally, the ritualist seer will sink into a deep sleep as a result of the utter exhaustion. Now, the goal of the aides must be altered. They must try to awaken the ritualist through sexual stimulation alone. But upon the first sign of the ritualist awakening, all stimulation must cease. This should continue indefinitely until the ritualist is in a state of which is between waking and sleeping, and in which his or her spirit, set free by perfect exhaustion of the body, and yet prevented from entering the city of sleep, communes with the Most High and the Most Holy Lord of God, of its being maker of heaven and earth. The rite is over when the ritualist falls into the total sleep or awakens as a final orgasm and falls into an undisturbable sleep. Upon rising after the sleep, the ritualist seer should immediately write down his or her remembrances. This ritual of erotocomatose lucidity is from Crowley's works, although it is said that the technique was devised by and given to him by one of his women students. Another example of sex magic of this thought control type is novelized in Crowley's book, Moonchild. There is one more position for divinatory sex magic which I will share with you. Let me make clear, however, that it is designed primarily for people who are slender, athletic, and strong. It involves a tantric sexual position known as the crow. After the usual opening and much sexual stimulation, the man, while standing, lifts the woman so that she is upside down and facing him. In this position, they may have mutual oral sex. Usually the woman will lock her legs behind the man's neck or head, depending on the length of her legs. The man will usually support the woman by holding her around her waist. This position can cause the man to tire physically quite easily, however, unless he is in a very good shape. The woman who is completely inverted will have a great deal of blood flow to her head. This can lead to seership and divinatory experiences. The only technique that I have not tried, nor any of my students confess to, is erotocomatose lucidity, but I can say from personal experience and from the reported experiences of some of my students that these types of sex magic techniques are some of the strongest and most effective magical techniques available. Part 2. The next technique I wish to talk about is which I call outer alchemy. Of the three techniques of sex magic, it is the easiest and it requires the least amount of self-discipline. Sex magic of outer alchemy, unlike the other two forms of sex magic, requires the use of a partner of the opposite sex. Thus, it is by its very nature not a technique which can be adopted to male or female homosexual practices. Thus, must lead us to a brief discussion of magic and sexuality. Anybody can do the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. It does not matter if you are Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, atheist, or anything else. All that matters is your ability to perform the ritual. When I perform the ritual, I may visualize God as a concept which exists before the gods and goddesses of creation. Others may see God as the Christian Trinity. Still others may view the source of the energy in the LBRP as Jah of the Rastafarians. It does not matter. If it works for you, the point I am trying to make is that although our magical practices are spiritual, They need not follow any particular religious viewpoint. True, the Kabbalah has an intrinsic Jewish flavor to it, but this is because it has been safeguarded by the Jews for the past few thousand years. One of the things I have tried to do in this course is to make the procedures general in spiritual nature and thus applicable to any religious belief or lack thereof. Just as it is possible to separate spirituality from religion, so too, from a sex magician's point of view, is it possible to separate sex from love. Please note that I am not saying sex should be separated from love, only that it can be. But the fact of the matter is that sex can be viewed as a form of exercise. I am not trying to take a swinger's point of view that all sex should be based on desire, lust, etc., only for sex can be based on the relationship which can develop between two loving people. In fact, the most valuable sex magic experiences I have had been with partners whom I truly love. But what I am saying is that just as spirituality can be separated from religion, so too can the sex of sex magic be separated from the sex experience in a loving relationship. This does not mean that you should have sex with a partner other than your regular partner using sex magic as an excuse. In fact, I would suggest that you do not do so unless you have told your partner about it and have your partner's approval. And this approval should not come through teeth-biting lips due to anger and jealousy. Remember, honesty is vital to a magician. This means that if you do not have a partner or if you have your partner's willing permission, it is allowable to work with another person when doing sex magic. Please note that what I'm saying here is not a license to have sex with anyone because you are doing magic while having sex. Rather, I'm saying that certain forms of magical ritual, including sex magic rituals, can be done with a partner other than one you are involved with in a love relationship. I personally consider love and established relationships to be very important in a person's life. If you are a participant in a ritual, including a sex magic ritual, will create a hardship on your relationship, I urge you to reconsider your choice to perform such a ritual, or perhaps you can archive the best method, which would be to have your partners participate with you. So if you happen to be a male or female homosexual and both you and your partner believe that sex can be separated from love, you can perform outer alchemy. This will depend on your nature and the nature of your relationship. Perhaps the best way to conceive of a sex magic ritual is as just another ritual, one which happens to use sex organs instead of a chalice and wand. It is the belief of many magicians that the classic texts of Western alchemy are coded information for the performance of sex magic. The basic idea is that the sperm of the male and the ejaculatory fluids of the female have natural magical qualities as a result of mental direction and sexual stimulation. The alchemical instructions are simply ways to make these magical fluids stronger and more powerful. Although I will be giving a type of outer alchemy ritual shortly, I will try to limit some of the precise alchemical terminology. Full alchemical practices interpreted through the idea of sex magic are far too complicated to discuss in this course. If you decide to investigate the traditional alchemical texts as a source for sex magic rituals, it is important to understand two things. 1. Some of the practices given in the alchemical texts are merely chaff to hide the true nature of the techniques and its hidden wheat. 2. Several words commonly used in alchemy are codes for sexual ideas. Example: the athanor is usually described as a special type of oven used to slowly heat the material which you are working with. According to sexual magicians, it means the penis. The serpent is said to be a result of hearing a substance in the athanor. To a sex magician, it is the semen. The blood of the red lion is also semen. The circumbrite is a type of alchemical container, as is the vagina. So too is the retort, which is usually described as another type of alchemical container. The menstruum or menstruum of the gluten is the result of the slow heating of a substance in the athanor. Sex magicians believe it to be either the female lubricating fluids or ejaculatory fluids or both, depending upon the sex magician you talk with. First matter is described as a mixture of the serpent and the menstruum. While this is rather a hazy type of substance to the physical alchemist, its meaning is clear to the sex magician. Finally, the Amrita or elixir is defined as the transmutated first matter. How it is transmutated and how it is used is the secret of alchemy. One of the traditional secrets of alchemy is that the process of taking your basic material and heating it must be very slow and take days or even weeks to accomplish. To a sex magician, this means that the best way to work with the male and female fluids is to take a great deal of time in their preparation, possibly hours. This involves having sexual intercourse without orgasm or ejaculation for a very long time. The mental technique used to accomplish this is known as kadeza, pronounced kad-etza, with the accent on the second syllable. The modern technique of kadeza began in the late 1800s. A man named William Lloyd put forth the idea that intercourse which lasted for hours and in which the man did not ejaculate was better for the man, the woman, and the relationship. Needless to say, his book on kadeza was quickly banned as being pornographic. Metaphysical thought in many places at the time believed that every drop of semen was equal to 10 or more drops of blood. Therefore, having fewer ejaculations would be better for the man, while the increased intimate contact would be good for the couple and the relationship. The problem with this, as already stated, is that according to Masterton and Johnson, the average length of time for intercourse from the time of the insertion of the penis to the man's ejaculation is 2.5 minutes. Since this is an average, it means that for every man who can last a mere 5 minutes without having an orgasm, there is another man who can last barely 30 seconds. Fortunately, there are a variety of techniques available to allow a man to delay his orgasm up to several hours. The basic kadeza technique for delay of orgasm is to concentrate on the purpose or goal of the intercourse rather than on the physical sensation. And what we are doing here, it would mean focusing on the purpose of the magic rather than obtaining sexual gratification, i.e. orgasm. If the man or woman comes too close to an orgasm, he or she should stop to the physical motions and if necessary withdraw his penis from the vagina. Unfortunately, this primarily mental technique of ejaculation control is not enough for most men who, from adolescence, have trained themselves to have ejaculation as a goal of their sexual activities. Many men believe the lie that they can have physical problems if they do not ejaculate every time they are involved in lovemaking. One woman told me that her boyfriend always insisted that he have an orgasm with her or he would get sick. And while it is true that after many periods of sexual excitation without an orgasm, a man may feel some minor discomfort, this is not a dangerous condition and is alleviated by having an orgasm or by the mere passage of time. The point I wish to make here is that most men will need a combination of mental and physical techniques to be able to control the orgasm. This is especially true considering that some men, such as the boyfriend of the woman just mentioned, believe that orgasm must be their immediate goal in every sexual experience. Of the physical methods, the most well-known technique and the one which causes the most problems while you need to practice it is the Meisters and Johnson's squeeze technique. In this technique, when the man feels that he is about to have an orgasm but he is not yet past what is called the point of ejaculatory inevitability, he must withdraw his penis from the vagina, then either he or his partner must literally grab the penis and apply heavy pressure on the bottom of the penis, just behind the head of the penis until the need for ejaculation passes. After a few weeks of such practice, the man can develop good control over his orgasm. Unfortunately, this is not the most pleasant experience for the man or his partner. Certainly, the partner would need to be very understanding while the man trains himself with her help. The following tantric system is much better. The advantage of the tantric technique is that it uses several physical techniques simultaneously, and your partner need never know you are doing them. First, just before you reach the point of ejaculatory inevitability, that point after which there is no stopping the orgasm, take a very deep breath and hold it for a slow count of 16. While you are doing this, look with both eyes at the tip of your nose. Second, begin to breathe slowly. As you do so, roll your eyes in a counterclockwise motion. First up as high as they will go, then straight to the left, then down, then to the right, then up, finally back to where you have started. Thus, you are not making a circle, but a large square or rectangle. As you do this, tense the anus muscle. the sphincter, as hard as you can. Once you have completed the counterclockwise motion 3 times with an exhalation slowly releasing the anus muscle, repeat the above steps 3 times, even if the feelings of the ejaculatory need have faded. Note that it is totally possible to use this technique without withdrawing from the vagina, and your partner need never know what you are doing. But the technique which is probably the best for control of orgasm is a Taoist technique and is primarily physical in nature. At the point just before ejaculatory inevitability, stop the thrusting motions and take 3 deep breaths. Thus, using the first 2 or 3 fingers of either hand, apply firm pressure on the perineum, the point midway between the testicles and the anus. This point, known in acupuncture as conception vessel 1, is important to the energy system of the body's reproductive system. Applying firm pressure here changes the energy system, which has a resultant effect on the physical organs. This actually causes a change in the valves within the reproductive system of the male with a suction-like effect. Ejaculation cannot occur. Using one or another of these techniques, you should be able to control your orgasm. The Taoist technique has an unusual side benefit which cannot go into deeply here. For this technique controls ejaculation only. Practicing with this technique until you learn how to exert mental pressure on the vessel of conception point 1 will yield a change in the body's energies so that the man can have an orgasm without an ejaculation. Since the result of the ejaculation is detumescence in the male, the result of this technique is not only prolonged intercourse but also the legendary male multiple orgasm. The feeling is much like small orgasms without ejaculation, followed by an incredibly huge orgasm when the male does allow ejaculation to occur. Our experimentation with this technique is invited. Now let us assume that the man has the ability to control his orgasms. The next part to understand is the idea of Amrita or elixir. As I have said, it is a transmuted or changed first matter. The first matter being the combination of the sperm and the female fluids. Shortly, I will discuss how the transmutation is done, but first I will discuss what is done with the transmuted first matter, the true magical elixir. The basic idea of this type of outer alchemy is that the combination of the sexual fluids of a man and a woman, the first matter is the magical in nature, becomes the elixir. The elixir must then be reabsorbed by the magicians performing this type of sex magic. The easiest way to do this is to simply allow the now flaccid penis to remain in the vagina for a period of 15 minutes. According to the Tantras, a sperm loses its magical power after 15 minutes, so a longer period is not needed. These fluids, to a minor extent, will be absorbed through the thin tissues of the vagina and the head of the penis. However, not all of the fluids are absorbed in this manner. Although many people raised in Western cultures may find the following idea disagreeable, a large number of sex magicians have overcome this phobia and treat the elixir as a magical eucharsis. As a friend of mine likes to say poetically, first he loves her, then elixir. In other words, after orgasm, the man performs oral sex upon the woman, taking the combined fluids into his mouth. He may then keep the fluids under his tongue, allowing them to be absorbed for the most efficiency. Alternatively, he may kiss his partner and share the elixir. Another possibility is to put the elixir into a small cup of wine and share the elixir. It is said that this idea of swallowing the sexual fluids, which may turn some people off, however, over the past 20 years, there has been an increase in the popularity of oral sex, so this taboo is quickly being overcome. It should also be noted here that this type of ritual can be done with others present when the cup of wine is used. The elixir-filled wine may be passed among others present. In fact, in some groups, another man or woman is chosen as the cupbearer. It is his or her duty to obtain the elixir instead of the woman's sexual partner. Obviously, there are many possibilities for outer alchemy. The only additional thing to add here is that the intercourse should last a minimum of 45 minutes to be effective, and after about 3 hours, depending upon the magicians, a point of negative return is reached. The final point before giving a ritual is the procedure of transformation, which turns the first matter into the elixir. It is done simply by prolonging the act of intercourse for a particular goal rather than for mere physical gratification. This can be accomplished by means similar to those already discussed, i.e., by willpower or concentration on sigils. There is also a system which aligns the magical workers within the forces of nature and strengthens the transmutation. Women have a natural menstrual cycle of approximately 28 days, matching the cycle of the moon. According to occult science, on each one of the 28 days, a woman will secrete a different fluid when she is sexually excited and/or has an orgasm. Therefore, a sex magic act can be performed on a specific day of the month for a particular purpose. By combining the spiritual forces of humans with the forces of nature, the elixir becomes an unbelievably powerful magical fluid. Here is a copy of a published list of magical abilities of the fluids of the 28 days, starting with the new moon of the woman, that is, the beginning with the day after the end of her menstrual cycle, from a list by Sariel. Notice that some of the lists have very broad topics. They can be affected by the magician's contemplation during the magical rite. As an example, the magicians may choose to help or hinder a fugitive by doing an outer alchemical sex magic ritual on the 20th day of the cycle. Of course, since this type of gray magic, a divination should be done before a ritual of this sort. I must note here that there are many lists of the magical qualities associated with each day of the lunar cycle. Sometimes each day is referred to as a digit of the moon. If you find other lists, you may wish to compare them to the one above and see which one is correct for you. In the book The Tree of Life by Israel Regarde, the author gives an outline of a ritual called the Mass of the Holy Ghost. This is pure and simple, an outer alchemical sex magic ritual. Here are his instructions translated into common terms. 1. After the usual preliminaries, the couple should begin their ritual sex. 2. Through the stimulus of warmth and spiritual fire lovemaking to the Othanor penis, there should be an ascent of the serpent sperm into the circumbata vagina. 3. The mixture of the sperm and the fluids of the woman is charged by means of a continuous invocation of the spiritual principle conforming to the work in hand. 4. The ritual is concluded by treating the elixir as the magical Eucharist or by using it to anoint and concentrate a talisman. As you can see, there is some overlap with the earlier type of sex magic described in this lesson. At the end of the Mass is described a technique of charging a talisman by simply applying some of the elixir to a talisman. This is a very powerful technique, as your experience will come to show. From what you know, it should not be too difficult to create your own sex magic ritual. First, do the opening by Watchtower, then do the actual sex magic. Follow with closing by Watchtower. If there are other people present, they may sit, holding hands in a circle around the pair practicing the sex magic. In some groups, they watch the proceedings, their own excitations enhancing that of the two magicians directly involved. Other groups have the people sitting with their backs towards the center of the circle so that the couple will have a modicum privacy. Thus, sitting in the circle should concentrate on the purpose of the ritual. This can be very difficult, as watching two people have sex, even if it is for sex magic, for a few hours can become very boring. Thus, learning to concentrate on a desired subject or goal becomes very important. Then, as stated before, the elixir can be mixed with wine either by the male ritualist or a cupbearer. The wine amarita mixture can then be passed around the circle. The couple actually involved in the sex magic should be the last ones to drink, so that they can get the final drops of the magical mixture. The pair can each take a small sip, passing the cup back and forth until the fluid is gone. Then, together, they should hold the cup upside down and say, "It is finished." The two systems of sex magic described so far in this lesson are traditionally Western in nature, although there is a simple evidence that both have been used by the ancient tantrics and Taoists. Similarly, the third form, or inner alchemy, is more traditionally associated with the Eastern systems. although it also has a firm foundation in the West. Part 3. The reason I call the previous form of sex magic outer alchemy is because it works with the energy system of the body and magically charges substances which are outside of the body part of the time. Inner alchemy keeps all of the forces within the body and uses the force of magically directed sexual excitation to strengthen and empower the psychic energies of the body. This inner alchemy may be the easiest to work for a magician who has diligently practiced the rituals of this course. Inner alchemy, sometimes called Tantra Yoga or Kundalini Yoga, involves the taking of the sexual excitation and energy and channeling it to the purposes other than the sexual gratification. When you are quite sexually aroused and stimulated, send the energy up from the groin toward the head. This is a sort of a reversed version of the middle pillar ritual. Important, until you have mastered the middle pillar ritual, do not try this technique of causing the energy to rise from the sexual center. Now that I have given the standard introduction on the subject and you have established that you know as much or more about it than I do, I want to tell you that it's all a bunch of garbage. I could use stronger words, but I have tried to avoid the scatological slang which so many people have as a part of their daily speech. However, let me reiterate that 90% of what you hear about Tantra is just plain wrong, and most of the rest is garbled at best. Let me start by breaking down some of the important notions which are totally false. Tantra yoga is yoga of sex. False. Tantra is a whole philosophy of which one small aspect is involved with sex. To call Tantra the yoga of sex would be like calling Hatha yoga the yoga of sitting with your legs closed. More and more books are being published which explain the secrets of Tantra. False. The secrets of the tantrics, especially the sexual secrets, have gone underground and are now kept within various occult orders. Many books coming out now are not written by initiated tantrics. They are either compilations, cut and paste jobs, or earlier works, or the author's errors and fantasies. Remember, many of the early tantric texts were written in code, a twilight language similar to the alchemical code described earlier in this lesson. If you don't know the code, you can only guess at the true meaning of the words. Kundalini Yoga is the ancient technique of causing the energy to rise up the spine until you achieve enlightenment. False. First, Kundalini Yoga is a new term invented by Westerners. The ancient term was Lala Yoga, pronounced Lay Yoga, and was first described over 1,000 years ago. The tantric who described it also explained that it was only symbolic and not to be taken as reality. Furthermore, do you know anyone who has achieved enlightenment as a result of Kundalini Yoga? In your readings, do the authors tell of anyone who has achieved enlightenment as a result of Kundalini Yoga, or do they merely tell what is supposed to happen? Have the authors of those books experienced it themselves? The answers to all of these questions is no. The Kundalini serpent is coiled 3.5 times at the base of the spine. False. All forms of yoga, to be Vedic, are true sciences. If proven false, they are discarded. Have you ever seen a snake coiled up in the entrails of a human body? Of course not. It's not there. Again, this serpent is symbolic, not actual. Now that I have dismissed some of the lies about Tantra and Laya Yoga, let's start rebuilding from the ground up. There are a large variety of psychic power centers throughout the human body. They are not limited to the 5, 6, 7, or 8 you usually hear about. As an example, there are several in the head and others in the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. This will become important later in this lesson. In the meantime, it is absolutely unimportant to worry about whether or not the heart chakra or the forehead third eye chakra is open. What is important is to learn how to make the energy flowing up from the base of the spine. What I am about to present to you is not some theory which you are meant to visualize, but scientific fact. It is repeatable and verifiable under laboratory conditions. If I do not have to explain it to you in this course, I would have you experiment first and discover for yourself what thousands of people know now. Further, I do not say this as a result of reading, but rather as a result of my own experience as an initiated tantric. Of course, there are certain things which I cannot divulge as a result of my initiation vows, but by making the slight alterations as well as coming up with the techniques based on secret methods, I will be able to give you more real information on inner alchemy than has ever been published in one place. In order to learn about the energy, you must learn about the breath. According to the ancient tantric manuscripts, which may be the oldest spiritual writings in India, a breath lasts about 4 seconds. This means that in a day you breathe 21,600 times. Of course, when sleeping or resting, you breathe slower, and when exerting yourself, you breathe faster. Therefore, this number cannot be taken as a real or even average figure, rather it is symbolic, and since these ancient tantrics thought enough about the breath to figure out how many times we supposedly breathe in a day, it is logical to assume that the breath was very important to them. And in fact it is. The oldest and original mantra, the repetitious chant, is not that of Om, but is the sound of the breath. Put down this lesson and just listen to the sound of your breath for a few seconds. Can you hear the mantra? You recite it 21,600 times a day. When you inhale, can you hear the sound? And on the exhale, can you hear the breath say, this mantra is repeated unconsciously 21,600 times per day. By controlling it, we can learn to control its power. Hamsa is a Sanskrit word which means swan. It is important to understand that you do not say or chant this mantra. Instead, you simply breathe and hear it on your breath. Try it for a few minutes. Inhale. Exhale. The less you try to do this, the easier it is to do. Just let it happen. Once you can hear the mantra in your breath, you are ready to move on to the next lesson. Kriya, pronounced Kriya, is a Sanskrit term which means action. By doing the following exercise, you will experience the action of the psychosexual energy or Kundalini force. Begin by doing the relaxation ritual. Once your body is deeply relaxed, begin a slow breathing and listen for the swan. As soon as you hear it, on the inhale part of the mantra, visualize your breath traveling up your nose throughout the top of your head, just inside the skull, and down your spine to the lowest tip of the coccyx. Hold your breath for as long as it is comfortable, then exhale. As you exhale, visualize the breath and energy going back up your spine around the top of your head, just inside the skull, and out the nose. As it goes, hear the part of the mantra. Practice this for 10 to 20 minutes. Then return to your normal breathing pattern. Once you can do this comfortably, instead of holding your breath on the inhalation, just pause for a second. Then use your stomach to help give you several short exhalations. This is accomplished by repeatedly jerking in the stomach muscles. You should hear your mantra saying, etc. repeatedly, keeping up the visualizations as above, and continue until you need to inhale. Repeat the process for up to 20 minutes. The first time I did this exercise, I had phenomenal results. After about 5 minutes, my body started to jerk about for no apparent reason. It was as if I suddenly got the chills or the heebie-jeebies in a small part of my body, and that part just had to shiver or jerk about. Each little shiver and shake is called a kriya, and is the most common part of the process. Then the kriya suddenly stopped and my body seemed to change. I felt as if my body was taking the shape of a long tube and the sides of my head began to spread out. My body began to sway and my head turned jerkily and irregularly from side to side. At first I got the feeling that I was doing this to see to all sides as a form of protection. But then I realized that what had happened was that I had allowed the Kundalini serpent, the true Kundalini serpent, to become one with me. My body had spiritually assumed the shape of a serpent and my head had opened into a serpent's hood. I was that snake. Then, suddenly, I buckled over almost in pain from the most intense erotic feelings I have ever experienced. Needless to say, it took quite some time for my breathing to return to normal. All of those experiences can happen to you. The only real danger is that you may not expect the sensation you receive. Normally, a teacher would not tell you what could happen and would allow you to experience it and then rescue you from these unknown experiences. Since I cannot be with you, I am telling you what you may feel and what type of experiences you should expect. I may not feel the sensation of becoming one with the Kundalini serpent or the intense erotic feelings with your first few tries at this Hamsa exercise, but you should feel the kriyas, the jerk motions. If you do not experience them, reread the instructions for this exercise. Nothing is left out. Once you have experienced the kriyas within yourself, it is important to learn how to experience both the kriyas and the movement of the energy in another person. To do this, you need a willing partner. Your partner should preferably already have experienced the kriyas within himself or herself. The best position for this exercise is sitting on the floor or on pillows or possibly on low stools of equal heights. You and your partner should sit back to back, preferably naked, with your backs touching along their lengths. If you prefer not to have nudity, the wearing of thin cotton shirts is fine. Both of you should perform the relaxation ritual, then begin the Hamsa exercise. You should both breathe at the same time. Feel your energy and your partner's energy go up and down the spine. Although the energy does flow within the spine, it is the spiritual essence of the cerebral spinal fluid. It also emanates beyond the physical body. The result of this exercise should be that both of your experiences should be intensified. It is important to realize that all the forms of working with the breath and working with the mantras are nothing but substitutes for sexual activity. The next step is to repeat the last exercise by using sexual activity as a period for stimulating the kriyas. To do this, once again, sit back to back in the previous exercise. It would have been best if both were naked. In this exercise, it is a necessity. Here, the breath no longer holds the same import as you move to tactile stimulation leading to the kriya sensation. After doing the relaxation ritual, both you and your partner should begin sexual self-stimulation. I hesitate to use the term masturbate, as to many people this implies only penile or clitoral or vaginal stimulation. Rather, begin by caressing yourself. Feel your face, hair, and ears. Touch your hands, arms, chest, and breasts. Caress your feet, legs, and thighs. Learn to sexually stimulate your entire body. However, do not touch your partner except with your back. Once you are both aroused, both of you should begin intense genital stimulation. This means not only stimulating the penis and clitoris, but also, if you like, your scrotum, perineum, and anus, or inner and outer labia, vagina, and G-spot, perineum, and anus. In fact, you can stimulate any part of your body which gives you the greatest excitation. However, neither of you should reach orgasm. Stop the genital stimulation before orgasm is inevitable, but continue to stimulate other parts of your body. When the feeling of the immediate need for orgasm fades, return to the genital stimulation. Continue this process until you experience your own kriyas and can sense the motion of energy in your partner. Once you have done this, you may either have an orgasm via self-stimulation, make love with your partner, or choose to have an orgasm. The next step is to vastly increase the flow of energy. This requires the uniting of the energies of both partners in a special way. It is a physical technique which automatically increases the energy flows. For this first technique, both the man and woman should at least be wearing undergarments, although more clothes may be worn. The genitals of both members of the couple and the breasts of the woman should have some covering. Swimsuits or tights and leotards also work well. The man sits cross-legged on the floor, on a pillow, or on a very low stool or bench. The woman should sit on his lap, facing him so that they can look at each other. She should wrap her legs around him. Pillows may be arranged to make this position easier to maintain for a period of time. Once you have both become comfortable in this position, it is the time for small talk. Ask if your partner is comfortable. Is there anything your partner wants to say, any feelings or emotions of which you or your partner wish to let go? Tell each other your fears and dreams. Unite mentally with each other. Next, start adjusting your breathing patterns. The closeness of the position will make it easy for each of you to breathe at opposite times. When the woman breathes out, the man breathes in. When the man breathes out, the woman breathes in. It should only take a few moments for both of you to become comfortable with the mutual breathing pattern. If you have practiced the middle pillar ritual and worked with the mantra Hamsa as outlined earlier, you will have very strong effects as you go through the next part of this exercise. However, even if you have not done so, the physical actions will have an effect on you. The man should look into the woman's right eye and the woman should look into the man's left eye. As she exhales and he inhales, she should sense the energy rising up her spine and leaving through her right eye, while he should feel the energy coming out of her right eye and in through his left eye and down his spine. As the man exhales and the woman inhales, you should feel the energy continue down his spine and out through his penis. She should feel the energy coming out of his penis and into her vagina and up her spine. This is represented diagrammically in the figure below. Before moving on to the next technique, you must be able to maintain this posture for a minimum of 20 minutes, although 40 minutes is preferable. It is too difficult to remain in this posture, however. There is an easier alternative which also work well. The major difference is that both partners can stretch out their legs. You can lean back and use his arms to support himself, or may even lean up against a wall or some pillows if there is room for his partner's legs. She may choose to leave her legs out or wrap them around her partner below her. Feel the motion of the energy and how it builds to a level even higher than you have achieved alone or back to back. As you practice, you may find yourselves shaking from the kriyas. That is a good sign. However, because of the closeness due to the length of breathing and the circulation of energy between both of you, intense sexual excitation and desire may occur. While this too is a good sign, wait until you have finished the exercise 20 to 40 minutes before engaging in intercourse or other sexual activity. You may find it to be some of the most ecstatic lovemaking you have ever experienced. The next step is to repeat the above exercise while unclothed. At the same time, the penis should not be in the vagina, as the amount of kriyas increases with this technique. You may be tempted to fiercely hug and caress one another. Resist this temptation. Keep clear and open eye contact with each other. You will quickly learn that the energy field is broken when eye contact is broken. The result is a loss of built-up energy, and it will take many minutes to rebuild the energy level that existed before the break in eye contact. After you have practiced this technique without clothes to a point where you can maintain the eye and breathe contact for a minimum of 20 minutes, you may add physical caresses. Since you do not want to break eye contact, this cannot include kissing and will be limited to the use of the hands. Pay special attention to the parts of the body that are not generally considered highly sensitive to touch. Caress the face and ears. Don't block the eye contact. The arms, legs, chest, and stomach. The woman can reach under herself to caress his penis and scrotum, while he can also caress her breasts, clitoris, and vagina. Although neither of you should have an orgasm, it will be a good sign if her lubricating fluids make both of your genitals quite wet. If either of you feels an appropriate orgasm, you should tell your partner so he or she will change the method of stimulation. Continue this practice until it can be done for a minimum of 20 minutes, although lasting 40 minutes would be better. When the caressing is added to the amount of energy cycled between you both, it should again increase. The kriyas may be enough to shake you apart from one another, in which case you should start the exercise over. Once you have completed this exercise, intercourse or other sexual activity may take place. As you have read, and I hope have experienced, the more intimate the contact, the greater the amount of psychosexual energy. The greater the amount of intimate contact, the more powerful are the kriyas. As they are greater in number, the intensity of the energy increases. If you have accomplished all of the above exercises to your satisfaction, you are ready to proceed to the next ritual. All that I have described in this section has only been preparation for what is to happen. The Tantric Ritual of Inner Alchemy, adapted to Western traditions. Step 1. Have your room dimly lit, preferably with candles. Let there be many sticks of incense burning primarily of sandalwood, patchouli, or musk. Be sure to keep them lit. In the center should be your place of comfort. and within arm's reach of it should be some water, wine, meat or dry cereal, fish or ginger, and sensual toys such as feathers, gloves, or fur, scented or flavored oils, etc. Most definitely not to be included are vibrators, penis desensitization creams, or sprays, or anything which could inflict pain or punishment. Gentle background music is also appropriate. Once the room is set up, close the door as you leave the room until the next part of the ritual. Remember to make sure that candles and incense cannot start a fire. Take the phone off the hook. Tell anyone not involved that you and your partner do not wish to be disturbed for the next few hours. Step 2. Together, you and your partner should take a long, leisurely bath, if at all possible. Scent the water with sandalwood or musk. Light the bathroom with candles. As you wash each other, talk out any problems you had during the day and let the emotional charge associated with these problems fade away. As the problems and their associated emotions fade, feel free to play with one another. Although sexual contact is encouraged, do not have intercourse. If you do not have access to a bath, shower together, then apply a light amount of scented oil or lilac or talk to each other. Finally, put on your magical robes. Step 3. Perform the opening by Watchtower, or at the very least the LBRP. Step 4. Sit together, the woman to the left of the man, and hold and caress one another. Feed each other with small amounts of the foods and drinks. Caress each other both physically and with words until the sexual excitation becomes so intense that the robes must be removed. Do so if this step took less than what you figured to be half an hour, but don't have any clocks in the room. You're going too fast. There is no rush. Step 5. Continue in the same manner. Use the toys you have brought. If either of you nears orgasm, slow down. Step 6. Once the excitation has reached such a state that the man is very erect and the woman is very lubricated, they can assume either position already given in the exercises. However, this time, the woman should take the penis and insert it into her vagina. There is another position which many couples seem to prefer and can also be used as an alternative to the previously described positions. The man lies flat on his back and brings his legs up so that they almost touch his chest. The woman, with her back towards his face, literally sits on his exposed penis, making sure that she achieves a deep penetration into her vagina, as this time the man can relax his legs. If the woman pivots to either side slightly, you will find that he will be able to place one foot on the floor and rest the other leg over her hip and leg. This is a bit difficult to describe, but very easy to achieve. The man can reach up and caress the woman from behind, and the woman can easily caress his genitals. Step 7. If you have done the practice, you will find that by now you should have reached a stage where eye contact is no longer necessary, but you must keep up the linked breathing pattern, and most importantly, don't move. That is, there should be no thrusting motions by either the man or woman. The only motions should involve the woman contracting and relaxing the muscles of her vagina and the man flexing the pubic muscles so that the penis will move within the vagina without thrusting motions. Step 8. Now, as you do the linked breathing, feel the energy move through and around you. As you will learn, it is the intimate contact which is important. Therefore, since there is no thrusting, it is unimportant if the woman ceases to lubricate or the man loses his erection. Stay still except for the inner genitalia motion described. Step 9. If the woman achieves one or more orgasms, fine. If the man approaches orgasm, let him use the control techniques given earlier in this lesson. Step 10. Let the krios increase until you have a Mahatantra exercise, more on this later, or until a minimum of 40 minutes has passed. Step 11. You may have regular intercourse or engage in other sexual activity. The alchemical elixir produced will be very strong for a period of 15 minutes, and although it is not necessary for this ritual, you are urged not to waste it. Step 12. Do the closing by Watchtower, or at least the LBRP. The rite is over. About the only thing I haven't covered is what I call the Mahatantra exercise. Maha means great, and the Mahatantra exercise is great indeed. It is nothing less than the exercise of a Kriya magnified a millionfold. For most people, orgasms tend to be a brief climax which only resolves the immediate buildup of sexual energy. Only rarely is it a true total release. The Mahatantra experience is that ultimate desired superorgasm wherein your entire body seems to release the pent-up tensions of years. Generally, it lasts for only 20 seconds to 2 minutes, but it may seem like it lasts for hours. It is feelings of joy, power, release, excitement, contentment, unity with all, of being one with the divine source of all that is. It is enlightenment. It is an altered state of consciousness that makes LSD look like a grain of sand compared to a desert of ecstatic experiences. You may have an orgasm when you experience Mahatantra, and if the man does so, he may or may not have an ejaculation of sperm. And although this technique is a form of inner alchemy, as was suggested in the ritual, do not waste the elixir. Of the Mahatantra experience, I can tell you no more, not because of vows or anything like that, but because there are no real words to describe intensely personal and subjective experiences. Until you have experienced Mahatantra, no words can describe it. Once you have experienced Mahatantra, no words can express it. There are a variety of positions for ritualized sexual intercourse, but since they are already printed in many sources, I will not repeat them here. I urge you to investigate them from the books listed in this lesson's bibliography. Let me repeat that the threefold division of the types of sex magic are quite arbitrary. I have used them merely as a way to make communication of the various techniques easier. In actual practice, those divisions tend to blur. That is why in the technique of inner alchemy, a useful result is the outer alchemical elixir. Some of you may have read that a man should not have an ejaculation at all, or at least as seldom as possible. Different sources have different attitudes towards this, usually depending upon the attitude of the group of which they are a part of. So whether or not you have decided to totally or partially withhold sperm is a matter of choice. Certainly the withholding of the sperm negates some forms of outer alchemy. I will make several points on the matter which may help you to decide. 1. The longer a man is sexually excited without having an ejaculation, the more magically powerful the elixir will be. 2. Even some of those traditions which do not believe a man should withhold his orgasm teach that the sperm should be quickly reabsorbed by the man. This can be done by keeping the elixir under the tongue and allowing it to enter the mucus or membrane, there by eating the sperm, or through a special hatha yoga technique which causes a suction within the bladder and allows the man to suck the elixir up his penis and into the urinary bladder where it is absorbed. 3. One of the reasons the withholding of sperm is suggested is for birth control. Modern birth control methods are quite effective for this purpose. 4. One of the reasons Karaza was practiced was because it was saved the lives of many women. A major cause of women's deaths have been complications of birthing process. While the deaths rate due to giving birth has dropped remarkably in economically advanced countries over the last 100 years, it is still a problem in many places in the world. However, I dare say that most of you reading this have access to modern birth control methods and birthing procedures. Karaza at this state should not be held as important for saving women's lives. Absorb the qualities of that deity. I find another similar idea far more enticing. If the essence of a deity can be invoked into food or drink, why not invoke the god or goddess into a person and have sexual relations with that god or goddess? Certainly the myths of Greece and Rome are filled with such ideas. There are some Wiccans or witches who do practice this, calling it the Great Rite. The technique of twofold. First, the appropriate god or goddess must be invoked into a man or woman. For this, see the instructions in lesson 9 of this course. Second, the other person should first worship the embodied god/goddess and consider what he or she is about to do. Make love with a god or goddess. The worshipper should take that attitude and demeanor and realize how privileged he or she is. The worshipper should really be in an almost constant state of awe. Any sexual fluids from the embodied god or goddess are holy and should be considered as a sacrament. A Taoist ritual. The ancient Taoists had a similar ritual to Laya Yoga. It usually took place outside on a hill and required the person seeking enlightenment, a sensitive assistant, and usually one or more sexual helpers. First, through sexual activity and breath control, the main participant would reach a state before orgasm and seek to maintain that state with the help of his or her sexual helpers. The result of this, of course, would be the physical twitches the tantric call kriyas. The sensitive assistant would watch and detect the energy as it begins to move up the spine. To prevent the energy from leaving the body, the assistant would plug the anus with material dripped in wax. The assistant would watch as the energy moved up the spine. If it seemed to stop, the assistant would pinch and poke the body to make the energy continue to rise. As it approaches the head, the assistant would make sure that the head's orifices, like the anus, were plugged up at the right moment so that the energy could not escape. The result would be that the energy would end up exploding out the top of the head through the tantrics called the lotus of 1,000 petals, and the result would be nirvana. Part 5. When I was going to UCLA back in the late 60s and early 70s, people seemed to care more about one another than they do at this time. Granted, this is a generalization, but I have found through interactions with hundreds of college students that their main interest today seem to be how much money they can earn after they graduate and where the party is that they're going to tonight. From a magical standpoint, those current more selfish attitudes are a necessary outcome in response to the previous decades of caring about society and the world. I certainly do not therefore condemn what I see, though I am saddened. It seems a media event must be scheduled before anyone shows how much they care. If anything, I must condemn the members of the previous generation who were directed towards society and could not see the underlying nature of the universe. Every action does have a reaction. In one cycle, people try to change society, and another try to impose their personal wealth, and so it goes. I have yet to meet any group which is perfect, but one group which I have always supported is the loosely knit women's liberation movement. Certainly it had what I considered to be necessary excesses in the beginning, but one thing which was very important was their insistence that each woman should be viewed as a unique individual and not as an object. Unfortunately, sexism towards women has not decreased. It may be less overt, but it is still strongly in existence. To top this off, there is a new prevalence of sexism towards men. In the past, I have heard men talk about their dates not in terms of a woman being interested, intelligent, fun to be with, stimulating, erotic, etc. Rather, they talk about the size of their boobs or the shape of their legs. Recently, I have heard more and more women, when discussing their dates with men, describe not as fun, intelligent, gentle, kind, generous, stimulating, etc. Rather, they talk about how he was cute and had tight buns or good pecs. Far be it from me to criticize beauty, however, it is a marvelous gift from the divine, although the divine is helped quite frequently at the spa and by the plastic surgeon. Still, to judge a person only on their appearance is nothing less than vicious and cruel. It turns people who don't match to the norms into sad, unfulfilled, and lonely people. And since most of the appearance is a gift of birth, it is clearly but a step away from racism. It is not only those who are oppressed who experience loss as a result of appearancism. Those who do the oppression suffer too, for they never interact with others who may have a beauty inside which far outshines their appearance. More, the oppressed might be able to add to the life of the oppressor more than the oppressor could even imagine. I freely admit that I like to be in the company of what I consider to be beautiful women. However, some of the most interesting women I have ever met have not stepped out of a magazine centerfold. In fact, the women who have been my favorite and most erotically exciting lovers have not been overwhelmingly pretty. Those who have studied Crowley's life know that he took exceedingly ugly women for lovers on purpose. But what does this all have to do with sex magic? Perhaps the most racist and sexist society which ever existed was the Indians during the Middle Ages. Everyone had strict rules to follow depending upon parentage. This caste system existed for hundreds of years. If you were in an upper class, you could be defined by having the shadow of a member of the lowest class, an untouchable, pass over you. It was a racist, sexist society which makes ours look like pure equality by comparison. But they were freedom fighters then as now. During the day, they obeyed all the rules, but at night, when the curtains were pulled, things were different. Rather than trying to change society, they tried to change themselves. Outside, they acted like anyone else, but in their temples within the Kalakatra, or magic circle, these Kola tantrics treated everyone equally. Caste, appearance, skin color, or shade made no difference. Inside the tantric temples, all men were gods and all women goddesses. And these tantrics believed a whole philosophy of beauty, love, understanding, sensitivity, science, and art, while Western Europe went through the Dark Ages, a period of hate, filth, superstition, ignorance, prejudice, and selfish egotism. Naturally, when the Westerners conquered the India with their better weapons, they tried to destroy Tantrism for being evil. You may have heard of the Kalakatra and its group sex magic ritual. If you and some your friends have been practicing the material in these lessons and wish to try the ritual, I will present it next. You all must adopt the attitude of the tantrics, however. It is very unlikely that all of you will appear to have stepped from the pages of Playboy or Gentleman's Quarterly. You must be able to see the beauty, the divinity, the likeness of God or goddess within us all. Due to the society and the impact of film and television, it is doubtful that a group of 10 men and women could do this. However, I suggest starting with this preliminary exercise. This exercise should be done with a minimum of 3 men and 3 women. 5 or more of each sex would be preferable. In a large room, let there be one of the women and all the men. There should be a comfortable chair in the center wherein sits the woman. The men sit on cushions in a circle around the woman. Everyone should be naked. The other woman should sit outside the circle in the darkness or may not be dressed. By predetermination, let one person do the LBRP and another do the BRH. Similar rituals, although with a Hindu flavor, were done by the ancient tantrics. Now, one at a time, let each man worship the woman in the center of the circle, for she, like all women, is the embodiment of the feminine aspect of the divine. Each may worship her in his own way. You may dance or sing in her honor. You may wash her hands, feet, or caress her. And yes, this does imply touching or kissing the breasts and genitals. However, it may be treated in the form of worship and awe, not mere sex. Either ways of worship would include chanting her name over and over, giving her gifts, giving her food, rubbing her with scented oils, etc. If she becomes sexually aroused, this may be seen as a sign of favor for the goddess, which she is. Close with the LBRP. Now, without saying anything, repeat the entire exercise with one of the men in the center of the circle, while all of the women now nude in the circle. He should be worshipped as the male aspect of the divine. The rest of the men may wait in the darkness outside the circle as the woman did before. The man should not be the boyfriend, regular lover, mate, or husband of the woman who was previously in the middle of the circle. Once this is completed, let everyone dress and then gather in a circle and discuss his or her feelings. Special attention should be paid to the feelings, expressions, and actions of both the people who were in the center of the chair, acting the roles of the goddess and god, and their regular romantic partners, if any. Is there any jealousy or anger? Are such emotions hidden just below the surface? If so, these people are not meant for this type of work at this time. This should be repeated for each of the women and men of the group. The ancient tantrics had nothing like this, but they did have years of training under the watchful eye of the tantric master teacher. When the teacher decided that a pupil was ready to participate in the Kalakatra ritual, and only then would a student be allowed to join. Since you probably did not have a tantra master on your block, the above exercise will help weed out those who are not emotionally ready for the group working. This does not make them bad or immature. It merely means that at this time they are not ready to do this work. If one member of a couple is not ready to participate, both should be excluded. Let us assume that you now have 5 men and 5 or more women ready to do this ritual. There may be more women as there are needed, as seen as initiatories and introductresses can help the couples in the ritual. Have a room with no furniture but filled with pillows and throws. If it is winter, be sure that the room has plenty of heat. Let there be incense and candlelight and flowers, food, wine, and cool water. Let there also be erotic playthings such as scented oils, feathers, and soft furry things. Let all the foods be in bite-sized pieces. Let gentle music fill the air. Let there be 2 other rooms, one a changing room for the women and one for the men. Let each change into special outfits for the men. Big, loose peasant shirts and drawstrings pants are excellent. Rings and necklaces are appropriate, as are small bells on the clothes and jewelry. The same is true for the women. Also, their clothes should be even more sheer than the men's. They should also apply makeup and even exotic body paints to exaggerate their sexuality. As an example of this might be adding some red color to the areolas around the nipples or to the pubic hair. Also use small drops of different scented oils at various spots on the body so that a traveling nose can find different scents wherever it goes. All of the women should wear soft shoes which are easily identifiable from each other. Let the men go into the main room first and do the LBRP and BRH. Once this is done, one man should take the knife and use for the LBRP and touch its point to the floor just to the right of the door through which women will enter. You should then pick the blade straight up as high as he can, reach and move it over the top of the door and down to the floor by the left of the door. He has thus made a doorway in the magic circle to allow the women to enter. A knock on the door will be a signal for them to do so. And once they come into the circle, the actions of the man with the knife should be reserved so that the circle is closed. The men should sit toward the rim of the circle, the women to which she replies, God, thou art mine tonight, thou art my husband till it be light. Now the kissing and caressing and use of erotic toys can increase and the clothes can gradually come off. From here, there are 2 alternatives. 1. When intercourse begins, the couple should take a comfortable posture and not thrust. They should synchronize their breathing until they have the Mahatantra exercise and reach nirvana. 2. Realizing that the deities of Tantra appreciate the energies of love, the couple may have prolonged active intercourse with much thrusting in honor of the gods. When finished, each couple may sleep or rest together and may repeat option 1 or 2 until it is light. When the first light of dawn is seen, the LBRP and BRH should be repeated, and everyone should return to the dressing rooms and reclothe. Note on this ritual. 1. It should start at midnight and end at daybreak. 2. Unless you happen to pick your regular partner for the Kalakatra ritual, you should not seek out your husband/wife for the night for the future sexual encounters unless you are both unattached. 3. Traditionally, there may be extra women in the circle. They may guide things. One of them may be the woman who claps the time for the men and also aid the couple by bringing them food, drinks, and erotic toys. They may also caress and kiss the couples while the couples are engaged in intercourse. However, they do not actually have intercourse with the couples, nor should the couples seek to caress or kiss these women. In the beginning of the ritual, they are treated like the other women as the men go around the circle, feeding the women and playing with them. 4. The method of picking partners given here is a traditional one. Another way is to have the women form a circle inside the circle formed by the men. Then one woman claps while the circles move in one opposite directions. When the clapping stops, each person becomes a couple with the member of the opposite sex nearest to him or her. 5. Although this is based on an ancient tantric ritual, not all tantrics practice it. Similarly, most Protestants don't worship in the same way Catholics do. So, if someone tells you that he or she is a tantric and they don't do this sort of ritual, it may be true, but find out the tantric tradition they belong to and who initiated them into the tantra. Chances are they speak with little knowledge. This is a very dangerous ritual. Many good relationships have broken up because of it. One or more appropriately, many relationships which seemed good have broken up after the ritual because the relationships was not really stable, nor secure, nor ready to handle the freedom of the Kalakatra. Because of this possible danger, should you or any reader attempt this ritual, neither the author, publisher, nor distributor will be responsible for the outcome. If you have any doubt at all after trying the preliminary exercise, don't do this ritual. The ritual of the Kalakatra has been introduced primarily for purposes of completeness and for people who are capable of dealing with such a freedom. But just as those who have practiced ceremonial magic in a group have no doubt discovered that increased numbers do increase the power of the ritual. So too will those who practice this version of the Kalakatara ritual find the nearest of others doing sex magic will increase your own abilities and success. As I described at the beginning of this course, I did not merely sit down and write this set of lessons, rather, they began after years of study, followed by over 10 years of giving lessons and writing. But times have definitely changed. When I began, the sexually transmitted disease STDs of the time were controllable through drugs. Later came genital herpes, a disease which at the time of the writing is still uncurable. Even so, it would frequently go into remission, staying that way either permanently or for years at a time. But over the past few years, a new STD has appeared seemingly from out of thin air. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS, is transmitted through the sharing of bodily fluids, especially blood and semen. There may be other modes of transmutation, but they are not currently known or agreed upon. The really dangerous part of this disease is that it takes 5 or more years after infection to become aware of it, and it almost always is fatal. Throughout this course, I have stressed the idea that a magician takes responsibility for his or her actions. Therefore, if you decide that you wish to have more than one sexual partner, you may accept the responsibility for that action. If you choose to share bodily fluids with your partners, you must also accept the responsibility for that action. But let me suggest an alternative. Most of the techniques and rituals described in this chapter can be performed by loving, mutually dedicated couples. In fact, practicing many of the techniques described here can enhance and empower your relationship. It is therefore suggested that you work the various forms of sex magic with one partner. If you choose to have multiple partners, you do so at your own risk, at least until a cure for AIDS is discovered. I hope that for those who are currently afflicted, and for those who feel angry because they must alter their actions in fear of this disease, that an effective cure or method to induce remission is soon discovered. Review. The following questions are designed to help you determine if you have mastered the information in Lesson 10. Please try to answer them without looking at the text. The answers are in Appendix 2. 1. What level of intelligence do you need to have before you are immune to being brainwashed? 2. What are 3 major divisions of sex magic? 3. What happens to a thought held in the mind at the moment of orgasm? 4. What did Reich discover about the moment of orgasm? 5. According to Masters and Johnson, how long is the average duration of intercourse before the man has an ejaculation? 6. What 3 things are involved in any divinatory technique? 7. Many people believe that books on alchemy are simply codes for what? 8. What, according to sex magicians, is the monstrum or menstruum of the gluten? 9. How many people achieve enlightenment by reading books on Kundalini Yoga? 10. Working with breath and mantras are substitutes for what? 11. Why is the ritual of the Kalakatara dangerous? The following questions only you can answer. 1. Are you still doing the regular rituals and keeping records? Have you experimented with other rituals and techniques? Do you meditate? 2. Would you do sex magic? Do you find it fascinating or repulsive? Do you think you could never be brainwashed? If you wouldn't do sex magic, is it okay for others to do sex magic? 5. Since the beginning of this course, have your feelings about life in general changed? How?